Welcome to the Independence by Design podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a business owner and ways to get unstuck from the day-to-day so we can design a business that gives us a life of independence. We have a lot to catch up on, and I was holding back from asking a lot of clarifying questions in our little pre-session there. So I'm fascinated because you've done a lot of work, introspective work, and there's all the mechanical stuff that you and I've talked about as it relates to business and stuff like that. But when I saw your email come out, Alex, I was just like, first of all, I was like, fuck yeah, he's back. And like, it sounds like you're doing good. And I'm excited about that for you. And I wanted to know, how did you go through the chasm? Honestly, at the highest level. And because and I'll maybe even set a little bit of a container for this, Alex. When I read Bo Burlingham's book, Finish Big, after I sold, his book was, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's really what set my entire journey off, which is 2 or 3 out of 4 people were upset and miserable and had regrets after they sold their company. And the people that didn't and were happy, the 1 out of 4 knew who they were, what they wanted from their company and why. They just understood themselves and the game and all this stuff. So that's what I've been at, that journey for 12 years almost. And a lot of it's psychological. And that's why I've done probably a third of my podcast on the psychology part of it. And so we can talk about net proceeds and deal structures and multiples and weighted average cost of capital, which I do a lot. But also then there's these human beings that are meat suits that show up and it's like, what's up, dude? We're still here as our person. So anyways, I don't know what you want to pick up from that.
Yeah. The spreadsheet stuff bores the shit out of me. Like, it's a necessary evil, but like weighted average cost of capital. I think I learned about that during my MBA and it went in one ear and out the other. So like I pull in on those things when I need to use them, but outside of that, dude, like let's get into the human stuff. One thing I've heard through my conversations, having come back, and by the way, that email took me an incredible amount of like, I don't want to say courage, but I was like drawing on something to say, hey everyone, you haven't heard from me. And I'm like, I'm good. And here's some stuff that's happened. And I hope that you're good. And I'd like to catch up and like get back on your radar. And it's been
how
inspiring.
are the responses? Yeah, I was just say how are the responses.
In terms of business, folks are generally they've either gone backwards, they've middled, or they've like blown up, which has been pretty consistent of how businesses go. So that's been, there's a lot tied into that because with most entrepreneurs, their sense of self, their sense of worth, how they feel is really kind of correlated or caused by how well the business is doing, which I'm sure you've seen a lot of and experienced probably firsthand. But I've had some conversations with people that maybe didn't feel that confident in themselves or didn't think they were capable, have like got runs on the board, and there's a sense of like pride and ownership. And in what I was doing back then, in some ways I was like a proxy for confidence for some people because I'd be a sounding board. So they'd be like, this is my goal. I want to do this. And I'd be like, cool, this might block you. You might have a challenge with that. But if you execute and if we say the course, you can get it done. And it's like, I can get it done. It's like, you can get it done. A lot of these people got it done. So it's like fucking cool.
That's cool. That's awesome.
It's very fulfilling to see. So yes, that's
for people like, cause like how many people and you went through some identity and some, reflection issue. I mean, and again, I want to get into it however depth you want to. And like whatever worked, because like I had sent you a podcast, and for the listeners, I'll put in there. I've been talking about putting it in there, out there for a while, of all the shadow self and all the psychological shit. And I've got a YouTube video of like the meaning of life, God, and money. And so like, like small topic, right? And so, that's why I brought up Bo's book, because like there's a real thing here that like can cripple people after the sale. Not only from like, I mean, there's so many nuances behind it. So like when I saw your email, it's like, because I knew you were on and off, struggling with different identity issues and stuff. I don't know if that's how you'd word it, but like, anyways, I'm curious if you got a lot of feedback of like, hey, people are pumped that you're doing well and support on that aspect? Or was it cool to like, because you immediately went to everybody else is doing awesome. So I could tell you're obviously like, very thoughtful of other people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the way that I define or try to articulate my experience was that I had all the breakdowns in one go. So I had, spiritual breakdown, nervous breakdown, physical breakdown, relationship breakdown. Everything exploded. And I won't get into all of the nitty gritty of why and how, but from a professional perspective, one of the things that I realized is that I used my business as a way to keep myself so busy and so occupied that I didn't have to face other things that were going on in my life. And so post sale, had a bunch of cash. And then I'm like, oh shit, I can't run away from this stuff anymore. Like it's right. Like I'm nose to nose with all of this stuff that I've just effectively like buried or avoided or just kept myself so busy that it was convenient to not look at it. And there was always something else to do. Like there was always something else to do. So I guess like through the process that I went through, I had to try and had to fail at a bunch of different things. And I learned one of the lessons that I learned is like being resilient is so awesome, but where you point that is just as important as how awesome being resilient is. So it's very easy to get onto the wrong track and just try to like barge your way through an impossible kind of wall when all the time you're getting signal from people around you, which is what happened with me with coaching, that they can use your help or they are wondering how you're doing. I had a couple of people say, shit, you're alive. Like legitimately, like, I'm so glad to hear from you. Like very, very happy because, it was a pretty heavy walk. But I mean,
you seem happy.
I'm happier. I'm older. I'm wiser. My hairline is starting to creep back up my head, which I think comes with the tyranny of time, but I've come to some acceptance of that. But yeah, the biggest thing is just like, I guess, a sense of compassion, as we were saying before we jumped in, like running businesses, being right in the thick of things, it can be, you get to learn who you are. You get to find out exactly what you're made of, but sometimes you don't like that.
It's, I think you well said. I interviewed a friend of mine, Rob Dubay. You would like him a lot. I'll have to send you the podcast on it because like he is the most peaceful. He wrote a book called Do Nothing. Like no shit.
Did you read that yet, dude? Have you read it? Come on.
Yes. I said, well, this is how fascinating it is. I met Rob in 2017, Alex, and he's now partners with Gino Wickman at the 10 Disciplines. So like he's I remember because Rob does silent retreats and like, because again, you listen to the podcast I sent you with me talking about my shadow self and being addicted to dopamine and all this stuff. And I remember when I met Rob and I was doing the podcast with him in 2017, and he told me he does silent retreats. I was like, that sounds fucking horrible. I couldn't imagine being by myself in my own head. And now I've been meditating every morning for 4 years. I mean, I've got journaling practices. I like half my time like spending thinking, and it's like crazy on the other side of that. But I say this because you had said that, the business and like it becomes, we were talking about it becomes a reflection of us and like what's driving us, and you were burying certain things. And like, so I'm curious, like, here's some of my thoughts, and I'm curious on what you, based on your experience and what you've seen, is like, so many people say, well, like step back, because Rob has stepped back. He's running his company from the boardroom that he started. I mean, completely ego dissolution, understands how the company and his legacy and his time and all this stuff and his energy all fits together. And like, he would be sitting right here talking about all this stuff that we started before we hit record. And like, but like what I have seen, and like back to Bo's comment, is it's tied into my dad's story too. He built the business to prove to the world he was worthy. And he would say that right here. And I see that like a lot of us as entrepreneurs start like that. And like the sheer stupidity of a lot of stuff that we do, we have to be like driving off of some intrinsic conquering the shadow self, or addicted to affirmation, or addicted to proving, the awards, or whatever stupid bullshit we're all measuring ourselves against. And the moment it's like, hey, by the way, to have a healthy business, everybody, you have to like stop being who you are, and then like build systems, and then like delegate, and like not be the man. And like, I think it's like this dopamine addiction to the chaos, like where it's actually a neurological like synapse, where like we're addicted to the chaos of the answering all the questions, being the head honcho, or closing the sale, or something like that, where like, so there's like this, back to what you were saying, like there's this process I think we should go through while we own the company, so that way we don't like the experience that you had. So here was my dad's analogy of what we went through, is like similar to you, like chaos, and then it's just like over. And like I called it a phantom anxiety, where like he said it was like we were driving a dump truck down the highway with water in it. And we hit stop, and all the water came flying over the top of the dump truck. And it's like, there's your bunch of baggage, and here it is. So I don't know, like where your thoughts on the dopamine addiction, how hard it is to understand the relationship that you have with your business. I mean, I think it's very fascinating that you found that out afterwards, but I think it's actually way more common.
Heaps to unpack there. So
yeah, nothing there, right?
The framing that I think about with this is, and this is my personal kind of skew, I think I'm slightly masochistic. Like there's something in pain, and there's something in challenge and turmoil that just like draws on my reserves and activates me in a way that sitting in an office job can't. Like it literally cannot access that part of me, because I don't have my back up against the wall. I don't feel like I do. I'm not responsible for people's salaries or incomes. There's not enough pressure to get me fired up enough to like be my best self, which it's a weird kind of relationship.
Why do you say that?
Because I mean, I've done it, man. I've worked in big companies, and I've worked in other like startups and scale ups and all this different stuff. And for me, I feel most active and most on when I'm under an immense amount of pressure. Like I will find ways to put myself under pressure. So it's not necessarily like chasing feeling good, but it's chasing the feeling of being like fully like locked into something or in flow with something. So an example that I use is like
I would track you on that.
Yeah, like in sport with basketball, I never keep track of the score, but I'm always trying to play as hard as I can. So like that way of thinking, when I'm playing pickup basketball, I always have to ask other people what the score is.
You want to keep playing. You want to keep playing.
I just don't care about, some level I care about the outcome, but it's like I get so narrow and so focused on what's in front of me that I'll find ways to just stack up and pile, very, very gargantuan tasks, things that other people would say like, that's kind of out there. It's kind of crazy. But I've seen it in other entrepreneurs as well. Like there is a level of disconnection from reality that you almost have to do something significant, because most people around you are not going to understand it. They're not even going to mean to talk you out of it. They're going to try and be supportive, but they're not going to get where you're coming from. So they don't want to see you fail, and they don't want to see you in pain, and they don't want to see you struggle. And they'll try to be supportive and constructive. But then what they're actually doing is like, they don't realize they're actually really trying to talk you out of it, or projecting what they think, which is like, maybe you should just go for security, or maybe you should just go for like a career, or do something else. So, I mean, that for me has been a thing. And
so a question on that. So I'm just asking you, coming from your own perspective, I'm not trying to generalize on other people here, is like, so if that's the case for you, then when you don't have a company, I can understand how there's a void of that then. But was there something that, I mean, it sounds like there was historical things for you personally, or whatever, physically or health wise. I don't know what the things were that made the absence of that worse, where like, is there a recalibration with yourself where, because like I when I hear that, I don't think about that situation inherently good or bad. It's just neutral. Because like the way I think about it, life, Alex, is like I got 8.5-year-old twin girls, and we got this book called Run Your Own Race. Like, do whatever the hell you want. Like, judge yourself according to your own game. But then being comfortable with yourself while playing that game. So there's kind of two layers to that. So like, does that make sense? So like, was there something like when after you didn't have that like in that, if you had to recreate that pressure, can you do it in a healthier way now? And what is different?
I mean, I've had this really like honest kind of, I guess I've done this really honest analysis of what it is that I do and what I gain from it. So my one-liner is I coach founders to scale without losing their marbles. And so there's a bit in that because like technically I've scaled and I've lost my marbles, so I can help you like maybe not walk that same path if you don't want to. Like that's the thing that I can help with. From a business perspective, the business model of coaching, it's shit. Like it's just like your incentives are misaligned. There's not like a asymmetric upside. From a commercial perspective, it doesn't make any sense. So that's cool because it doesn't feel like work. Like for me, it doesn't feel like work. I find myself doing it anyway. And therefore it's almost like feels like a bit of a cheat code or a gift because I can get paid to have conversations that I would enjoy having anyway. And the vast majority of those conversations is me just asking questions to seek to understand or help someone seek to understand where they're at in their own experience. So like, I mean, in retrospect, comparing, let's say pre-2008 to post-2008, pre-2008, accolades mattered to me. I think like recognition and validation and those sort of things like mattered more to me than I probably gave them credit for. Exiting was like a huge moment for me to say like I'm legit, like I've reached this like legitimacy in being an entrepreneur and have gone from nothing to something and hooray. But post 2018, I think with having spent like a lot of time in turmoil and just coming back to some level of normalcy, like those sort of things are awesome. Like if that's what is important to someone else, for me, it's not super important. It's actually more about the day to day. Like it's enjoying having good days, challenging days, things that I enjoy doing. And I'm like pretty happy to keep it quite narrow and simple in that regard. And I'm sure in time, some idea or something will come through where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and like run at this thing 1,000% again. But I put like a lot less pressure on myself to have to get there and have to do it because I feel like I've done that before and I kind of shortchanged myself and try to just push and make things happen where it wasn't particularly my turn or my time. And that's like not really thinking that I would do pre-2008. I'd be like, I can fucking do anything. I can make anything happen. And sort of did.
Well, and I'm so fascinated about this because like 5 to 10 minutes ago, you said you need to have all that pressure. And then you just came in and said it's about the day to day and not having that pressure. So I'm like, I'm trying to understand.
Let me clarify.
Yeah.
So I have a threshold for the amount of contact time that I can have like coaching people because you have to be so on and so present. So that's about 3 or 4 hours. Like I could podcast for like 5 or 6 hours a day, but there's a max threshold for me of about 3 or 4 hours. So the challenge or the pressure that I put myself under is I'm like, how can I be as useful as I can with like a narrow amount of time I have to do with marketing? How can I like look after myself in a way that I can be fully supportive of the people that are paying me a bunch of money to get advice? So it's almost like there's this kind of like sequencing or organization of day and tasks and things that is going to change depending on what's happening in my life. And I'm still trying to maximize within that bound. And that's where the pressure or that feeling of like as an example,
you're still like, optimizing, right?
There's optimizing, but there's also sequencing, and there's also just like figuring out how effective I can be. Here's a scenario. I've got hundreds of hours of coaching calls. There's heaps of nuggets in there. So I'm like, how can I make that useful to other people? So I will spend just hours and hours poring over these verbatim question and answers, figuring out how to pull that out to make it into something useful for someone else, and then figuring out how I can like use that as marketing material or something educational, whatever else. And I think that comes from the fact that I like genuinely care about that. And that's where the pressure comes from, because I'm like, how can I make this as useful as possible? I don't want it to be like, here's me big noting myself, or here's me talking about my story, or any of that sort of stuff. It's like, how do I keep like coming back to that and coming back
creating
to that?
value for the world, right?
Yeah. But it's like a very different frame from pre-2018, because I was like, what can I get? And now it's like, what can I give? And that's a very
interesting
different way.
Okay.
So the pressure, that responsibility is still the same, but like how I measure success is like very, very different.
Okay. And what I heard is, so the way you're measuring it is what can you give into how are you measuring it? Like, what would you define pre-2018 versus now?
Oh, pre-2018, we're talking MRR, we're talking growth rate, we're talking acquisition multiple, we're talking, all of that good stuff that like all the good numbers that entrepreneurs like really care about and anchor to. Like, it was live and die by my growth rate, live and die by the amount of hours that I am, investing into the business versus my return on time. These days, frankly, it's very warm and fuzzy and very fluffy. It's impact. So I've been feeling really, really good talking to old clients and former clients, because they're like, that like put me on a trajectory that I just could not believe. Like, it was just life-changing. And we're talking like people having financial security and being able to spend more time with their family and those sort of things. And I mean, the really simple way that I think about it is like the number of people helped. Like, it's a very, very like baseline metric. And then I just accept that off the back of that will be, hopefully a thriving and fulfilling business, versus all of these other, like number of clients.
Your face, your face, even while you say it, you can't even.
I can't bullshit, man. I don't have it. I just don't have that.
So what changed? Like, what did you go through to get to where you are right now?
I had to square up with myself. All the stuff that I'd avoided by being super busy, anything that I'd buried, like it all came rushing forward, and there was really nowhere for me to go. So I had to get into a position where I could like fully accept all these different constituent parts of myself and be at some level comfortable with that. Like, I think when you go through like massive amounts of upheaval, I say breakdown. Like, breakdown's a nice way to frame it, because it's just like it felt like a big kind of stripping off of different things. Like, all these parts fell away.
Base layer. You went down to the base layer of who you were, right?
Yeah, and there's something in that, because we're talking about control and security and like feeling like you've got order and all that sort of stuff. But when you're in crisis, man, doesn't matter how much money you have. Doesn't matter. Like, none of this stuff, nothing that's external can help you, really. Like, frankly, like there's nothing that anyone else can do for you. There's nothing that money can do for you. And so I had to find a way to be in that zone and make sense of that, and also like come out the other side of it. And so that changed me, dude. It like fundamentally changed me. And I have a lot of fun with this, because whenever anyone has, how people say like people can't change and leopards can't change their spots and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, like I've walked it. So
I've watched my dad. I watched my dad, Alex. He has put some insane work in, and him and I actually, I'm going to have him on. I'm going to have like a 3 or 4 hour episode with him where we just throw all of this shit out there. Cause in 2020, I was convinced he was going to die unhappy with nothing. And now he is like 180'd, happiest dude, most content, money's coming his way, opportunities are coming his way, and he doesn't need any of it. So it's like, it's fascinating. And I'm curious because you listen to that podcast of mine, like, and I've lived it, I've walked it, I've seen it, where like the fear of our shadow, or like not being aware of our shadow, or like I think that life disproportionately gives us what we don't want the more we resist it. And the moment that we don't need something, it comes. And like, it's this fucked up, like, humor of the universe. And I say that because like, what's fascinating, what you were saying is like, you had to go through all of that it sounds like you change your priorities of what you're solving for. Like, yet at the same time, like, wouldn't it be nice if we could figure that out without, like, while we have the machine, or like, you know what I mean? Or is the journey just the fucking process? You know what I mean? Like, I guess, and I don't know what my question, like, because you went through that whole thing, and I've been through the same thing, because I'm terrified of, like, back to what you said, I'm not terrified. I'm like, I know what I'm capable of if I lose my marbles. And I just don't, I would rather not deal with that. I would rather do hard things I would rather, I'm trying to think of how to put it. Like, acknowledge it, know that it's there, do the good things, and prioritize the right things to deal with it, I guess.
I mean, my point of view on this is that, like, and this is my perspective and my experience, but like, life will like give you just as much as you can take, like just as much as you can handle. So if crisis is headed your way, or if there's something coming down the line, I mean, that's just kind of how it goes, and you can't choose that. I don't think you can choose it. I think some of this stuff is, some of the stuff is like, it just is how it is, right? I've thought about this a bit. So the company that I sold, it exists today. The product lives on, and we exited in 2016, 2017. So that's like 8-9 years, which is rare for an acquisition. But at the same time, do I believe that I could go back and do the same thing again? Like, could I start the same business and scale it and have success with it? And the answer to that question is yes. Could I start a different adjacent business in a different vertical? Yes. Could I do a completely different business and have success with it? Like, that's a maybe, like a maybe, probably, like depending on if I was like really interested or passionate about it. And the reason that I say that is because I think that once you walk that path, there's something that happens internally where you go, okay, I've done that and no one can take that away from me. And I've got that baked in, and I recognize what it took to get there. And I roughly know what those steps were. And you can't learn that from a book. You can't learn it from a podcast. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can learn it from this podcast. I don't know, but like,
I think we got to all jump in our meat suits and live it, man.
So there, like, that's kind of the, that's the upshot of all of that. But as I was saying before, like my kind of anchoring towards feeling like discomfort or pain or just getting thrashed, like I consistently look for it. Like, there's easier ways for most people to make a buck than to sit there and have someone like pretty much emotionally unload on you for like an hour or two in a very high trust and a very high stress environment. But that activates something in me, and I'm wired in the way where I have this, like, I'm solid enough in myself to be able to deal with that and manage it, What I find fascinating is you weren't, so like when you were going through it yourself, who did you rely on? And then like, how does that whole journey, kind of going back to like, I think what you went, is it like what we go through is what we have to go through, kind of what you were saying, right? Like there is no other path. And that's why I don't believe in regrets, but you're solving for different things now. And is there, I'm trying to think of how to word the question. Cause like, as your people are coming to you, like, are you pulling off of your experience with yourself as you were going through that introspective time? And you're almost like coaching yourself. Like, I'm kind of curious on like, what are some of the things that you learned, I guess, as you went through that? And you said you lost your marbles. Like, what is it that you learned? And then how are you
How are you thinking about things differently?
Well, the probably the biggest gift of all of that was recognizing that there is nothing external that can help you when you're in that zone. Like sometimes it's just it is sometimes just a function of time. Like you are in crisis. You need to look after yourself, drinking alcohol, doing more drugs, doing more stuff is not going to get you anywhere. Like you just have to sit with it. So you know how you talk about this like silent retreat? Like imagine being in a silent retreat, but you're living in it, but you're like walking through the regular world. Like you're just so like there's so much going on internally. No one else is part of that experience that you're dealing with or going through. You're getting bombarded by all of these different things that you can't fully understand or explain to anyone else. I think probably another gift of that is like some level of faith or some level of trust. Because when you are really down and you are in that zone, it's almost like it can almost feel like there's nothing, like there's really like no pathway out. There's no way out. So kind of why bother? Like, why would you try? Because it's already fucked. So when I've, in the last few years, when I'm talking to folks that, and this is a trigger warning for anyone that has depression or is suicidal, by the way, when I've talked to people that are in that zone within themselves, everyone has their own respective experience of that. I had my own respective experience of that. And people will want to say, want to make you feel better and will want to help you and want to handhold you and want to nurture you and support you. But my experience of this is there's something internal, and I mean, you can't, it finds you or you find it. And that's what happened for me. So like, I just had to stick with it. I had to grit my teeth. I had to figure out ways to just kind of get things back on track. Very fortunate and grateful to have like family and friends and people around me to support me and like, kind of, I guess in some ways like keep some barriers,
some guardrails,
keep some guardrails around things. But ultimately, like they couldn't walk it with me. They couldn't do anything for me. And there's a sense of kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to throw back to your podcast title, but like independence, I guess. Because you realize like ultimately like you have to own it. You have to walk through it. So yeah, the gifts or the benefit of all of that is compassion. So seeing people that are in crisis and being able to.
Were you compassionate with yourself? Like how did you?
I had to learn it, dude. It took me a very long time. Compassion, grace, just like trying to understand and try to like, because that was never something I was particularly good at either. Like I was always like really quite hard on myself about everything, which yielded good performance, like got good outcomes, but it's kind of like I wouldn't speak to myself.
Good outcomes.
I wouldn't speak to anyone else how I would speak to myself. Like I wouldn't come down on anyone else in the same way. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, I do, because again, I've seen that podcast, and like I think, I appreciate you sharing. This stuff is very near to my heart because mental health goes through my family, and it's also why I like the psychology part of life and business. And I always say, because there's family members that like I didn't think we're gonna make it because of all these things, and say, well, as an alcoholic, you could shove someone into a closet in 24 hours, they will be sober. But with my family members, it's like you shove them in a closet and they're stuck between their ears. And on that is like I've glimpsed pieces of like what that could be like for myself, and so like back to what you were saying is like you talk about the being hard on yourself, and I think a lot of this is deeply interconnected with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and that the DNA of what drives us. And what I've had to learn, Alex, is that like. So, I mean, like in the podcast I sent you, I mean, I quit drinking a couple of years ago. I mean, I've just straight up judged. I fucking love dopamine. Like whatever way you name the vehicle, like I'll take it and I'll hit the pedal and I will freaking just own it. And it's like, and like, hell yeah. And like, but what I, and something about like when you said that voice inside of you, like what, so, and this is what's helped me. And I'm curious if this is kind of where maybe there's something in there that you can relate to, is like, I got to this point where like, I'm so fucking miserable to myself. If I know that I did something perpetually that I know was going to lead to a bad outcome, there's nothing physically that could be worse than how I would treat myself. So I might as well quit doing the shit. Cause like, that way I can look in the mirror, like I get hit by a bus or something happens or whatever happens. Like I fucking tried, what? I can look myself in the mirror. I tried my best. And cause like, if I knew I was doing something that could go the wrong direction. So I guess it's like, maybe it's tasting what that, or experiencing what that voice is like and how hard I can be on myself, that it's like, I might as well not. I guess is like how I've personally managed it. So I don't know if does that make any sense?
Look, dude, it's super, super, super logical, which is cool. And like, that's you. But a lot of these behaviors, so it's so emotionally driven. It's so subconscious. There's so much unraveled or like jammed up in there that you
gunk.
can't.
I call it gunk.
You can't even get it to a place where you can actually like logically analyze it, because like you don't have the ability to like see that stuff 2020. Like there's something about that where that's why folks that you can talk to or that can like help you see yourself from a different perspective are really useful, because you could be like, oh, right. Oh, see why I'm doing that. Oh, like I kind of get where that behavior is coming from. So, for me, it's always been like quite like a lot of my responses have been quite emotional. Like it's very much how I feel and very much like what, like the place that I get to. And that's also a difference between, pre-2018, post-2018. So I'll listen to that, that internal compass or like feel into those sort of things and just go, okay, like what's guiding me here? Because I can like logic the shit out of anything if I need to.
But for me, I'm tracking out, and I've done some alternative things that have helped me see the matrix, for how I use my words. And so it's combination of meditation, all the other stuff, and the physical and all that's too, because again, it's really hard, because like back to the dopamine, like I never knew what the fuck that meant up until Huberman and Peterson, all these people started talking about it. I'm like, oh, I can grab onto a word of how I've been behaving for a long time. So I think it's a lot for me articulating my behaviors, because there's words to be used for them. Michael Pollan wrote this How to Change Your Mind book. That's fantastic. There's a Netflix documentary on it. Some of the stuff that's also helped some of my family members, and to see differently. I mean, his book's called How to Change Your Mind. I fucking love it. It's a door from a ceiling into like the clouds. And I'm bringing this up, Alex, because like back to like what's I find fascinating about our jobs, I mean, as coaches and or business owners who have enormous ripple effects, is like our decisions ripple like the fifth order magnitude of like what happens every day with our time. So we have our time and we're making decisions about how to direct time and capital. And for me, thinking clearly and understanding my relationship to myself, my priorities, my goals, then gives me a framework to then understand how to make these decisions. So that way I can see the emotion or the dopamine compared to like, it's connecting the logic to the actual gut, like you said, like, cause I'm an animal too, but I'm just trying to use words to understand what's going on.
One thing that I will say about you, man, is that you have from what I understand of you, is that you have a good sense of discipline. Like your workout journals, to me, it just sticks with me. Are they up on your bookshelf somewhere? Are they around?
They're hiding now, but they're over there.
Have you got a stack? Can you pull them out? Can you like show them?
Let me see. Yeah. So
yeah.
let's see if I don't know if you're gonna be able to see them. They're there.
On the left there?
Yeah, it's the old
Middle,
black
middle.
notebook. There's duct tape with the dates on them.
Yeah, yeah. So the reason that I bring that up, like you have discipline. Like discipline is something that you have, and people don't necessarily know that they have that. But my perspective on that is like there's a result that you want to accomplish. There's a process that you follow to get that result. It works for you. You stick with it. In your life, you also have responsibilities. You've got a wife, you've got twin girls. So there's this kind of framing or this trade-off that you go where it's like, okay, there's this behavior that's going on for me, or there's this thing that's happening and it's having this ripple effect and there is this impact. And then I need to, I basically need to decide what the trade-off is. Like, do I keep doing what I'm doing and get that same result? Or can I see how changing my behavior is going to be more beneficial to myself and those around me? Can I show up in a different way? Can I, be more useful as a coach and as a husband and as a father and all those sort of things? I mean, for the folks that aren't built in that way, that don't have that kind of, they don't have that inbuilt kind of mechanism where they can really keep themselves, like there's a sense of accountability and there's a sense of kind of like, I don't even know what the word is. I think it is discipline. Like that's in the same way that you can go hard in the paint on smashing beers or smoking weed or doing whatever you want to do. You can also apply that to, working out or your business or whatever else. I think you mentioned this in the podcast where you kind of came to this acceptance where you're like, cool, I'm gonna be like that anyway, so I just need to figure out where to point it. Like you're along that kind of thread.
yeah, the rockets, the energy's coming out every day. Where is it going?
Yeah, and that's a very astute observation, and I think it's something that generally people they can't really get about themselves as an entrepreneur, because unless you're around other folks who are like that, you feel a bit weird. You're like, why do I have this great sense of urgency to do things? Why do I want to accomplish so much? Why am I never satisfied? Like all these different questions that you ask yourself. And then you feel kind of a bit of an outcast. And then you try to conform, which I've tried to do a few times in my life. That doesn't work.
And, yeah.
Dude, can you imagine me? In an interview? Holy shit. What a absolutely.
Or how about talking about boring shit? I'm like, by the way, have you heard what's going on with the Federal Reserve recently? Or by the way, what's going on with so, okay, I'm tracking you. The one thing that I want to I think there was some compliments in there and I appreciate that. The one thing that I want to throw out there is I think everyone's capable of it. And here's why. Everyone, because I was a pile of shit. And I wasn't always like this. And back to what I've learned. And these are words that I learned how to use from. So Huberman and Peterson were on a podcast for 4 hours, and it was intellectual porn for me. It was top neuroscientist meets top psychologist, and they're talking about literally how both sides of the hand glove work. And one thing that they said, what has helped me do what you just said and pull me out of the shadow self towards something greater is, according to Huberman and Peterson, that podcast, Alex, they were talking that the higher the noble aim, so the higher the goal, which is arbitrary. We're just making shit up. We're throwing a goal out there. So I think entrepreneurs are generally dopamine addicts, and we have to do what we're talking about. So the higher the noble aim that impacts the most amount of people over the longest time span, it technically heavenly means point up. So there's a lot of these words, and then sin means to miss the mark. And then they were explaining that because of the higher the goal, the bigger the impact over the most amount of time span, every unit of progress that we take chaos and turn it into clarity in the highest goal and the noble aim releases the largest unit of dopamine. So we can literally get fucking addicted to our goals if it's the right goal for the right reasons with the right people. And so then we're what we have, I think they talk a lot about this in, AA and everything, is that a bigger goal will pull you away from behaviors that don't satisfy that goal, because perspective is literally focusing in on the goal and going, well, these things don't suit me anymore. So like I literally made up goals to pull myself out of that shit. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that stuff.
I got some spicy takes on this one.
Okay.
And I think because we respect each other, you're gonna hear me out. I could not sit through a 4-hour podcast of either Huberman or Peterson. That to me just is like nails down a chalk.
So your intellectual porn is not the same as mine, apparently.
It's not the same. It's not the same, but by all means, it's as, it's if it gets you to where you need to go and it's like useful to you, more power to you. The idea of having this like this huge aspirational goal. The thing about that is there needs to be a sense of belief that you can actually accomplish that. So one of the things that we talked about off air was this idea of like people maybe not recognizing in themselves that they had the ability to get there. So I could talk to someone and see their business and be like, I honestly have no reason to believe that you won't be able to get there. As in, you can get it if you want to execute and stay the course. And sometimes, this is where the discipline part comes in, because when you're tired, when shit's going on in your life, when you've got, run out of fucks to give, there's all these other things that happen. That just like erodes that sense of self-belief. It erodes that sense of like, I can get this done. And you kind of like will revert and default back to maybe self-destructive behaviors, but behaviors that are not in alignment with your goal. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because, I mean, through my time of like having to self-reflect and all that sort of stuff, I had to get really intimate and like understanding of some of the reasons that I'm built the way that I'm built, and start to just accept that there's going to be certain things that are true that I can own and I can deal with. So as I said before, I've never been one that's particularly good at like doing, like, let's say, a job interview. And the reason that I thought that was because I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm this and I'm that. What it actually is I hate the idea of being told what to do. And so by going in and fucking charading.
Amen, bro.
So going in and charading and doing something performative to fit some like profile of what someone thinks you should be, it's like, it makes me feel physically ill. Like I'd be like, oh
yeah, I have an allergic reaction to that. Yeah.
And, sometimes those things, like sometimes it's very hard to be honest with yourself about some of those things that are just true about who you are. Like some of them are entrepreneurial traits, some of them are personality traits. But I think like the reason I'm sharing this is because I think part of the gift of all of my time going through this was having the time and space to accept some of those parts and just go, I mean, it's probably not ideal and I got to work with that a little bit, but I also can say, this is how I'm built. This is who I am. And I got to accept it. And that is part of that shadow piece, right? Like shadow to me, like and depends on if you read Jung and like who you read and how they frame it and everything else.
I've got the red book right there, by the way.
There you go. Right. A lot of it is just parts of you that are misunderstood, just misunderstood parts that are looking for some sort of validation, understanding, acceptance, whatever else. And the more that you make them the other, and the more that you like outcast them, and the more that you
it's integration, right?
Yeah, the more you abandon those parts of yourself, the more they have a hold on you, or like the more that they will show up, or whatever else. I don't think it's. I think
the more they snap back.
Maybe. I don't know if it's that reflexive, and I don't know if it's that scientific in terms of like
fair way.
Like it's all very fuzzy to me, but. I mean, the integration part, I think that people get in a hurry to integrate, and I did it myself because I was like, I feel like shit. I've got to get better. What I'm going to do is talk to everybody I can in every modality and do the whole thing, man. You're like, oh, I've got a problem. I'm going to throw everything.
That's your new thing that you're conquering in the same energy that you did with the company.
Yep. And I got some really, really good input on this. And the input was you can't skip any steps. And you can't skip any steps means that some of these things just have their own time horizon and you just got to hang on. Like you just got to stay the course and try to be good to yourself and try to have compassion to yourself. And, you know, I mean, really just at some level, like really look after yourself when everything is telling you to do the opposite. So
what's telling you the opposite? And that's where I'm interested, because like you said, you had some spicy takes on it. I haven't heard anything spicy. And so maybe it was just your way of, other than the fact that you just didn't want to sit through a 4-hour interview, because like, I think what I'm resonating with you is the integration with all parts of yourself towards things that are your priorities, that you have chosen as your priorities, which I'm tracking everything, which is like, and what's your goal according to your constraints and your beliefs. And like, so like when I say a high noble aim for the most amount of people over the most amount of time span, it's according to you and your life. And so like, I guess what I'm saying, Alex, is like framing it up like this. And maybe there's a two-part part to this. One is like, there's going through this shit to figure this out, to figure out that this is a thing is a process. Then once you figure it, like once you have taken the red pill and you're like, okay, now what? It's like, then there's like, hey, there's this framework that's useful to organize parts of my life to make them fit in a way that makes it's more unified than it was before for me.
Yeah. Well, I guess my spicy take is the fact that I have completely opposing views to you on the value of listening to people but specifically Huberman and Peterson, smart guys, accomplished guys. But when I've always had this thing with influencers and folks that have these platforms, which is like, look at what they do rather than what they say. So, you know, how do they carry themselves? How do they behave? And I'm not here to shit on anyone because I'm not holier than
I'm
thou.
trying. Yeah,
But if you're in a position where you have a great deal of influence, and I think this is a really common thing, you know, particularly for men, is that your ego just gets out of control. You start to think you're the big dog, you know, that tracks and those things happen and whatever else, and we're all human. Where I guess my kind of 2 cents on that. Yeah. Where my 2 cents on this is that I think that like the way that I've come to understand the frameworks or the guidelines that I'll follow has generally been like a trial and error process from lived experience. And it may not be the most efficient way to get there.
I think it's the only way though.
It probably is the only way. But what I'm saying is like, I recoil, like I hear wisdom and
just like a job interview.
Same thing, bro. It just internally, there's something that doesn't sit right with me. And that's why I'm very, very careful when I'm doing what I do is to I never tell anyone what to do. I'll listen to what they say. I'll offer them a plethora of options. I'll walk them through what the, you know, impacts are, pros, cons, that sort of stuff. But I'm just there to stand next to them. I'm not there to tell them like, this is going to be awesome for you or you should do this, because people have their own timing, and that timing factor for me, another huge lesson. Like even though I wanted to get through this thing so quickly, there was literally nothing I could do to make it any better, make it go any faster. And there was nothing that I wanted but to be out of how I felt. Like I just could not get through it.
Love it. And I would say that I share all of your beliefs on that. So maybe here's some further clarification coming from my end further clarification on my thoughts, not to impose them, is for me, what helps me, Alex, is figuring out what the fuck it means to feel the way I do. So I need words. I need to label things and to understand them to a certain extent, which is funny because like a lot of the, some of the alternative things that I've done or the meditation, it's literally sitting in all of the chaos at the same time without labeling it. So like, for me, it's about understanding this ebb and flow between order and chaos and being comfortable with the ebb and flow. But like when I look at because I agree with you, man. And I think there's a lot of, I've been let down by so many people that I thought I should be looking up to over, everybody crumbles essentially. And like what I've learned for myself is like, who gives a shit? Like for me, I don't care. Like what was useful to me in that podcast was understanding a framework of how to be addicted to dopamine towards doing good. Don't care what Huberman does or Peterson does on fucking Twitter. Doesn't matter to me. It was like I took a universal truth, I grabbed it, put it in my mental framework, and I think that's where like it's even interesting because my guess is people that are listening in probably had whatever weird feeling they did about the words that are the people's names that I have, and it's like we're missing the point, which is to talk about universal truths, and that's what I'm looking for, Alex. Where it's like I think they're like, I mean, with Carl Jung, the Red Book, it's like 35 years of him journaling about dreams, about like, how does this place work? And it would be useful to share those truths with each other if they could be useful. and so I think it's like this weird way of like organizing some ideas for myself and then going, okay, how am I going to trudge forward, with the chaos? And like, oh, if this is happening, maybe it's these reasons. And like, so I go out and I search for explanations. Is a different way of putting it, maybe.
Yeah, and we're all doing our best. Like that's the gist. Like everybody's doing their best with what they've got. So there's no slight from me on how you attack that. I think that
I wasn't taking it that way either.
Yeah. But I guess like I guess the bigger point there is like whichever method suits you or works for you, like go for it for sure. Like definitely get after it. Definitely go for it. I probably turned into a bit of a, I don't know, like my radar's just on with certain things that it never used to be on with. Because I could see there's aspects of myself that I can see and feel through some of these things that just are like, oh shit, I know what that feels like. I mean, like presenting to be something that you're truly not, like a false sense of confidence, a false sense of, and like a lot of this shit's wrapped up in ego. So the ego is like, well, you've done this, you've accomplished this, you have a right, or you have a this, or you have a that to be, on like someone that people listen to. But that's like, you kind of other people with that mentality, right? It's like,
don't you think most people are doing that nowadays? And it's so gross.
Oh, it is what it is, man. Like that's what makes the world go around at some level. But I mean, once you're aware of it, then the decision is like, is that something that I want to be a part of, or is there some other way I can behave which is more congruent with what I'm actually feeling internally? And I just come back to that so consistently now, which before it was all up here, and I was like, all right, how do I hustle my way to the next milestone? And then I'll like figure out the feeling shit later. And that's completely like upside down.
God, you would love that podcast with Rob. Rob's such a dear friend. And like the only way he manages his life is by his energy. It's like, this doesn't feel right anymore. I think I should change it. Like, and I think it's alignment, the energy, like everything that you're talking about. Yeah. It's, and like, I think here's what there's, you ever heard the book, The Fourth Turning?
No, I haven't.
Very fascinating. Concept. Has a lot to do, like you can layer it on the long-term debt cycle, but there's that book called The Fourth Turning that like through all recorded history, there's these 4 turnings, and we're in the process of this 4th turning, and you can call it the awakening, you can call it whatever. But like, I just think it's fascinating because I think most people can sense what you're talking about. Like, I'm just sick and tired of the bullshit. I want stuff that's real. And like, just that's why when you reached out and you're like, hey, I'm back, like shit's wasn't perfect. Now it's still not perfect, but it's good. And like, I'm working through it. And like, I just think that is universally helpful. Like things are not perfect. It's life. And like, we're all just,
so why do we all pretend? Why do we feel compelled to pretend? I really try to be as authentic and as like clear as I can. And that at some level is a discipline as well. So not to overstep or overstate or make, minimize certain things. But like, man, like I'm marketing on LinkedIn, right? And I'll like write something authentic and then I'll publish it And then I'll be like, oh, fuck, I've overshared. I've done too much.
I get my first fight on LinkedIn this morning because I was like,
did you?
I was like, fuck it. Like, I disagree with what you're saying.
Hell yeah. What was it? What was it?
Oh God. It was some fucking wealth manager about like some investment. And I was like, you're just wrong, in my opinion. Like,
Good.
the hurdle rate's not in like the buildup. And I just went and I was just like, and I think to your point, so here's why I think it is. I mean, like, man, I could go like off, like I'm going to do a hard left turn. You're going to be like, what just happened there? Is like, the money is so broken and we are in the last part of the debt cycle, and which is the fourth turning, and everyone's fucking time is getting stolen by the money printer. So what ends up happening is everyone has to keep hustling because everyone in the country and in the world is getting further behind by about 8 to 10% a year of debasement of currency, which is just the world is getting poorer from a time standpoint. So whatever, like what I've articulated in my head, Alex, is when you have the ability, when a society has the ability to print money for something that someone else has to work for, you're stealing their time, and you disproportionately reward Machiavellian and narcissistic type behavior because it's who can get closest to the money spigot instead of who creates value.
I'm tracking. Yeah.
We have completely distorted all of society for the last 100+ years, 1913, December 23rd, in case you wondered. And the moment that we have, I'm an Austrian economic, like Austrian economics, sound money is my deal. And it's like, because if we have to wake up and spend our time, we should do it to create value. When you were talking about your alignment with you and your coaching clients, how you feel like it's free because your value and their value are meeting with time, but then you're helping each other. I think that this distortion of the money is like drinking toxic water. So the reason we see all this bullshit online and all over the place, be like, who can raise as much money as possible from VC firms and burn money for 25 years and never make any money? Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense, everybody. Like, well, then if that's the game that everybody promotes, like, so like, I think it's just interesting that like we should have to wake up and earn value or create value to earn money that's proportioned to our time. And everybody's out there pretending because that's what's rewarded, unfortunately.
Is there a world where like awkward authenticity can be rewarded as well? Because like I want to live in that world a little bit. I feel like it's a lot less bullshit.
I think, but that's where the fourth turning comes into place. I think people, it's getting so, it's more and more people are waking up to this isn't working. Right? Like, it's not working anymore. And like, I don't know about you, but it's like, I see it. It's like, okay, all of my clients are getting pinched from both sides, from the price side and from the input side. And like, where's the cash flow? It's like, because the time's getting stolen. It's like, how is this working for everybody? Like, because I'll like back to like, I'll never tell anybody what to do, Alex, but it's like, here's the game as I see it. How are we choosing to behave? And it's like, how's it working for you? Well, I know that little like LinkedIn thread is not true. So like, and it kind of goes back to like, honestly, even to like, so there's the mechanical side of like the money and the finance and the business, the value and all that shit. And then there's the psychological side, Alex, where like the way I think about it too is like, when I see someone that's faking happiness, it's like, I know that they will figure it out sometime. I don't care. It's like, I have no jealousy, no resentment, but I can just sit in it going like, because I've experienced both sides, and it sounds like you have too, right? So it's like that person will figure it out. I don't need to solve that right now.
For sure. And you know, there's also a level of just like distraction. So I check myself on becoming a hater, because if I like see and hear these things and I get triggered, and then I'm like, if that's upsetting me, there's probably something internal that I need to look at. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just that person's behavior.
Question for
there's
you.
Something.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry. I couldn't wait to interrupt. I'm sorry. I've been struggling with that because like resentment is I hate that feeling so much. However, I had a friend recently put it going like, he goes, but I have an addiction to justice. So where do you balance between justice and what's like watching people get rewarded for doing what's right versus that's bullshit and that shouldn't be allowed?
I mean, I think that comes back to faith, hey? Like, justice according to whom? I mean, it's a really like, it's a bit of a nuanced one, but my take on it is that like it's along the lines of that time horizon thing. So when it comes to that time horizon, like those things will sort themselves out, and that gives me some peace. It gives me some peace. So like, as you were saying, where you like recognizing someone, or you see someone that's like kind of like talking out of their ass, or do you like need to check them on something, and there's part of you that bites on that. Like I saw a guy post the other day and he said this thing about bootstrappers, and he's like, people that bootstrap their companies just can't get VC. And the dude is like selling something into people that want to fundraise. And I was like, for starters, that it's like, I read this thing.
It's just wrong. It's just dude, like not even.
I was like, I could just eviscerate this guy. But then I'm like, he's just alienating his entire base, because anyone that wants to, like, hasn't raised VC before is by definition a bootstrapper, and he's shitting on all of them. And he doesn't realize that he's shitting on all these people that are his potential customers. So I sat there and I was like, you know, I have a bit of like, oh, you know, my sense of justice is that he should know that he's a dickhead. But I think that in time, when people realize that he's just like, he's literally shitting on everyone that's a potential client of him and showing that he doesn't really get what he's talking about, I mean, hopefully that sorts itself out. I really wanted to reply, man. I was like, oh, this is going to feel.
I know.
So
and I think what's fascinating is like, as you ever heard of Dunbar's number? So it's, we can manage 150 relationships roughly. And there's like, and it's like a hierarchy, it's a fractal, just like everything in life. It's a fractal. And like, I manage my time according to who do I want to have the highest amount of interactions with, because that's the time is the biggest constraint. And then back to like your question about authenticity, who you working with in your day-to-day work life, your personal life. So I manage it like by like, who do I want to have the highest amount of interactions with in my time? And then I just don't give a shit about anything else, honestly. And then it's like, how can I make my income wealth dynamic meet around the interactions of the time? And then everything else has got to be some sort of scale factor if I want to scale the income or scale the wealth. But like, first things first is the time and the people. But then back to the way it sorts itself out is like, it really doesn't matter to me. Because it doesn't. Right? Because
at the end of the day, like you buy into some of that, or you like, you know, take the bait. I always think like I can see myself taking bait on something. And then I'm like, relax. You don't have to help this person. You don't have to like have your say, because it doesn't. Yeah. I mean, I hope that it just sorts itself out, but you got to send me that thread, man. You got to send me this thread where you lit this dude up. This is going to be funny. I love it. I love it.
If you were to go back to yourself in like 2016, what did you say to yourself?
I'd say something along the lines of, you are not going to feel like you did the best you could with what you had, but you did. And I wouldn't take it on board as the 2016 self, because I'd be like, I could have done better. I could have done different. But at some point that would bake in. At some point that would really bake in. So, yeah.
It's awesome. This has been so fun catching up, dude.
It's been too long, man. We've got to do it again soon.
Yeah. We had some fun conversations, man. I mean, when we first started chatting, it was like, this is, I don't know, man. I feel like it. I had a friend of mine that said something really cool. He's like, you know what? He goes, everybody you introduced me to is awesome. I'm like, well, because you're an introvert and I have to meet 1,000 fucking idiots to give you the 5 people that are awesome. So you're welcome for being this amazing filter for you. And I get to meet people like you, man. That's so fun. It's just like, here we are across the world and get to know each other.
Hopefully I've passed the Tansom filter.
I would say so. I was unbelievably happy when I saw that email. Honestly, Alex, I was like, man. Because we had some fun conversations, and looks like you're happy.
Yeah. Well, let's keep the dream alive, man. I know that you've got Independence by Design. I'm keen to dive in, learn more about that. So in whatever way I can be supportive and helpful, you just let me know, man.
Love it.